Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 261. Chapter 261. Anna Pavlovna's presentiment was in fact fulfilled. Next day, during the service at the palace church in honor of the Emperor's birthday, Prince Volkonsky was called out of the church and received a dispatch from Prince Kutuzov. It was Kutuzov's report, written from Tatarovna on the day of the battle. Kutuzov wrote that the Russians had not retreated a step, that the French losses were much heavier than ours, and that he was riding in haste from the field of battle before collecting full information. It followed that there must have been a victory, and at once, without leaving the church, thanks were rendered to the Creator for his help and for the victory. Anna Pavlovna's presentiment was justified, and all that morning a joyously festive mood reigned in the city. Everyone believed the victory to have been complete, and some even spoke of Napoleon's having been captured, of his deposition, and of the choice of a new ruler for France. It is very difficult for events to be reflected in their real strength and completeness amid the conditions of court life and far from the scene of action. General events involuntarily group themselves around some particular incident. So now the courtier's pleasure was based as much on the fact that the news had arrived from the Emperor's birthday as on the fact of the victory itself. It was like a successfully arranged surprise. Mention was made in Kutuzov's report of the Russian losses, among which figured the names of Tuchov, Bagration, and Kuchasov. In the Petersburg world, this sad side of the affair again involuntarily centered around a single incident, Kutayisov's death. Everybody knew him. The Emperor liked him, and he was young and interesting. That day everyone met with the words, "What a wonderful coincidence, just during the service, and what a loss Kutuzov is. How sorry I am." "What did I tell you about Kutuzov?" Prince Vasily now said with a prophet's pride. "I always said he was the only man capable of defeating Napoleon." But next day no news arrived from the army, and the public mood grew anxious. The courtiers suffered because of the suffering the suspense occasioned the emperor. "Fancy the emperor's position," said they. And instead of extolling Kutuzov as they had done the day before, they condemned him as the cause of the emperor's anxiety. That day Prince Vasily no longer boasted of his protege Kutuzov, but remained silent when the commander-in-chief was mentioned. Moreover, toward evening, as if everything conspired to make Petersburg society anxious and uneasy, a terrible piece of news was added. Countess Helene Bezukova had suddenly died of that terrible malady it had been so agreeable to mention. Officially, at large gatherings, everyone said that Countess Bezukova had died of a terrible attack of angina pectoris, but in intimate circles details were mentioned of how the private physician of the Queen of Spain had prescribed small doses of a certain drug to produce a certain effect. But Helene, tortured by the fact that the old count suspected her, and that her husband, to whom she had written, that wretched profligate Pierre, had not replied, had suddenly taken a very large dose of the drug, and had died in agony before assistance could be rendered her. It was said that Prince Vasily and the old count had turned upon the Italian, but the latter had produced such letters from the unfortunate deceased that they had immediately let the matter drop. Talk in general centered around three melancholy facts: the emperor's lack of news, the loss of Kuchasov, and the death of Helene. On the third day after Kutuzov's report, a country gentleman arrived from Moscow, and news of the surrender of Moscow to the French spread through the whole town. This was terrible. What a position for the emperor to be in! Kutuzov was a traitor, and Prince Vasily, during the visits of condolence paid to him on the occasion of his daughter's death, said of Kutuzov, whom he had formerly praised, it was excusable for him in his grief to forget what he had said, that it was impossible to expect anything else from a blind and depraved old man. I only wonder that the fate of Russia could have been entrusted to such a man. As long as this news remained unofficial, it was possible to doubt it. But the next day, the following communication was received from Count Rostopchin. Prince Kutuzov's adjutant has brought me a letter in which he demands police officers to guide the army to the Ryazan road. He writes that he is regretfully abandoning Moscow. Sire, Kutuzov's action decides the fate of the capital and of your empire. Russia will shudder to learn of the abandonment of the city in which her greatness is centered and in which lie the ashes of your ancestors. I shall follow the army. I have had everything removed, and it only remains for me to weep over the fate of my fatherland. On receiving this dispatch, the Emperor sent Prince Volkonsky to Kutuzov with the following rescript. Prince Michael Ilarinovich, since the 29th of August I have received no communication from you. Yet on the 1st of September I received from the Commander-in-Chief of Moscow, via Yaroslav, the sad news that you, with the army, have decided to abandon Moscow. You can yourself imagine the effect this news has had on me, and your silence increases my astonishment. I am sending this by Adjutant General Prince Volkonsky to hear from you the situation of the army and the reasons that have induced you to take this melancholy decision. Alright, that concludes my reading of chapter 261. I'll now read my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 261. Ought not this person be destroyed? For Harold Bloom, literary criticism must be primarily literary, which he describes as personal and passionate. Under this reading, a critic's feelings about a fictional character might reveal more about the critic than it does about the character. If this is the case, then I am a horrible human being, because the first time I read War and Peace, I celebrated, gleefully, the death of Helene Bezukov. Maybe some of you did too. Glee, unfortunately, can be an almost automatic reaction to the demise of such a despicable character. Helene is dishonest, self-obsessed, deceitful, phony, mean-spirited, and to boot, a serial adulterer. She has zero redeemable features. Further, she wronged lovable Pierre, who is probably our favorite character in the novel. Some debased region of the human heart lusts for the ruination of such a person. Mine did, at least initially. As I reread and reread the novel, however, and as my philosophical toolkit grew, I came more and more to pity rather than to loathe poor Helene. A Year of War and Peace has been big on forgiveness and understanding. One doesn't really need philosophy to see that forgiveness and understanding are the more appropriate responses to characters like Helene. One need only look at their own experience. Next time a Helene enters your life, reach back to your childhood and recall all the wrongs your parents had to correct in your behavior. These wrongs were not the result of any inherent evilness on your part. Rather, they were the result of an ignorance of right action. Remember that people like Helene, just like you, are sometimes more ignorant than wicked, and therefore more in need of help than of hurt. Daily Meditation. Ought not then this robber and this adulterer to be destroyed? By no means say so, but speak rather this way. This man who has been mistaken and deceived about the most important things, and blinded, not in the faculty of vision which distinguishes white and black, but in the faculty which distinguishes good and bad, should we not destroy him? If you speak thus, you will see how inhuman this is which you say, and that it is just as if you would say, ought we not to destroy this blind and deaf man? Epictetus, The Discourses. Alright, thanks for reading with me today and for listening. That concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 261 of War and Peace. Hope you liked it. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links to all that are below. Your support is greatly appreciated. Tomorrow we'll be reading and reflecting on chapter 262 of War and Peace. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.